Today, I have the great pleasure to speak with the one and only Nicholas Kusmich. Nicholas has amazing experience in Facebook ads, online advertising, being an entrepreneur himself, having a tremendous business. He's going to share with us his view on what's going on in the Facebook world, the Facebook versus Apple world, but also we'll speak about what to do when you are a business owner. Enjoy listening to Nicholas Kusmich. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I am absolutely delighted to speak with the one and only Mr. Facebook, Mr. Online, Mr. Marketing, Mr. So many things. My friend Nicholas Kusmich, how are you?
Eric, very, very good. And I just have to ask, do you say the same wonderful, nice things about every guest that you have on your podcast, or is it just me?
No, it's impossible because you're unique.
True. I'll take it then. I'll take it. I appreciate this time together, Eric, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. And everybody is in for learning a lot. I had the chance to meet you thanks to Jason Gaignard and Mastermind Talk, and also to join your council mastermind. You are absolutely...
I had the good pleasure of having you try to rip out my eyes when we were doing jujitsu as well. We're very close, closer than most.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, I was not planning to do that, but that's true. We were rolling. That's what they said. It was my first time doing jujitsu.
Right.
And I just reached for your eyes, and then we stop and we start laughing. And you look at me and said, are you doing Krav Maga? I said, yes, me too.
Yeah, that's the problem. When you do Krav Maga for so many years, it's just natural instinct comes out, and you almost took out my eyes.
Almost, but no, not quite. So, Nick, I really appreciate you as an individual, as a human being, and also all the great advice. You have so much integrity, so much experience that you're sharing with people, and you have a fascinating story. So, if you can maybe tell people a little bit more about yourself, your journey,
Sure.
and then how you really get into what you're doing today.
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. And if you need to stop me anywhere or detour me anytime, just let me know. But I think it goes back. Well, I'll even go back even further than that. Supposedly, my mother told me before I was born that she couldn't have children. It was something that her and my father were trying and trying and trying, so much so that they ended up at that time. My father was an old practicing Catholic. And so they even went to the Catholic Church and they said, can we look into adoption? But they saw that my father had not been a practicing Catholic for a long time, just way back in his years. And so they said, well, because you're not there, we can't help you with the adoption process. And so they were in this kind of like tough little situation. And oddly as it would have it, now this is the story my mother told me, so take it for what it's worth. But she said she was introduced to an old Pentecostal woman, charismatic preacher. And the preacher said, do you want to have kids? And she said, absolutely. That's what I've been going for. And she said she kind of made this prayer to the gods and said, if you give me a child, you could do whatever you want with that child. And so that woman, Pentecostal charismatic preacher, prayed for her that day. And supposedly, as the story goes, a month later, she was pregnant with me.
Wow.
Hence why I'm an only child. In fact, there's no kids after or before me. And so this is the story I've been told growing up. But I think like most people growing up, I did have this sense of like, hey, I want to do something with my life. I think everybody has that sense. And at that time, as a young teenager, as an early teen, I felt like my worldview at the time told me that the way to do that was through my faith practice. And so I was early teens and I said, you know what? I'm going to be a minister. I'm going to be a pastor because that's the way I can have the greatest impact in the world. So lo and behold, when I was 17, I'd been studying and working as an intern at my church and all this. And at 17 years old, I had an individual come up to me and says, hey, would you like to speak at our church next Sunday? And I said, sure, let's do that. At our youth group at the time. Well, that led to them then hiring me as a youth pastor when I was 17. So I was amongst my peers. By the time I was 19, I got ordained and started my own church. And then for 14 years after that, I basically was a pastor of a church. And this is how I felt like I was going to change the world and bring my life purpose and help people that way. And I did that for a long time. But one of the things I did tell myself, and this wasn't right away, but it took some time to get there. I said, no matter what happens, even if I work at the church, I don't want to take a salary from the church, because then there's all these issues, right? If I wear certain clothes or drive a certain car or live in a certain house, the people are going to be like, well, hey, you're using my money to live like that. So I made a point to say, well, if I do this, then I'm not going to try to not take a salary from the church. I'm going to try to start a side hustle at the same time, just to be able to pay the bills while I do my church thing. That's what introduced me to the world of internet marketing. So, I mean, long and short of it is, as an only child, my father had been sick most of my life. He had his first heart attack when I was 4 years old. I remember going to the hospital, and he's just been in and out of hospital since I was 4. My parents, both of them, had this convenience store as a local small business. And my father, when I was about 17, 18, 19, had his his third stroke that left him basically blind on his right side and paralyzed. And so they had to give up the store, which was barely getting by anyways, but that was their only form of income. They had to give that up. My mother, for the first time in her life, as an immigrant mother from Korea who could. Speak English, was forced to try and find a job. You could imagine that wasn't easy. So she started going wherever she could. And finally, she got an interview to be a clothes folder at a laundromat. That was her job, to fold the clothes and put them in the bags when they send them off to the businesses. And I remember one Saturday morning, she came home crying. Of course, she didn't want her son to see this because I was just watching TV. And I said, Mom, what's wrong? She didn't want to tell me. I kind of leaned into her a little bit. And basically, she went for the job interview, and they didn't give her the job because she couldn't speak English very well. So I made a decision that day to say, you know what, I'm going to figure this thing out, and I'm going to support my parents, because I don't want to ever see anything like that ever happen again. And so again, I was around 17, 18 years old. I was, youth pastor, but I also need to find something that could support my family. The problem with that is when you're really desperate, you're kind of a sucker for everything. So, the emails that come out to say, hey, make $1 million tomorrow, or send some emails, or so I joined network marketing company. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I just joined anything that told me, hey, I made a lot of mistakes, but through those mistakes, I was introduced to the world of internet marketing. And I bought my first internet marketing book that said, hey, if you just can find a good product and you could sell that online, there's a way that you could have a real business here. So I said, oh, that's fascinating. So I started doing that. And then I read another book that said, well, you need to write a book and sell your ebook. So I'm like, okay, I'll write a book and I'll sell my ebook. And then they said, well, if you want more money, you turn the ebook into a course, and you could charge more than $17. You could charge $97. I'm like, okay, I'll do that too. So I did all this under a pen name, because I was a pastor and I didn't want people to think, what is he doing? So I used a fake name. I created this course. And fortunately, right place, right time, I was introduced to Facebook ads. This was way, way in the early days. You could almost say anything you want and do anything you want. And so I started playing around with Facebook ads. And back then it was ultra easy. And so I'd spend $1 and I'd make $1.10. And I'd be like, okay, this is pretty good. Spend $1, make $1.50. I'm like, okay, I think I'm onto something. But my illusion told me that everyone was doing the same. So I said, you know what, I'm going to stay in my little corner here and keep selling my ebook and my course. Well, then I was at a conference one day, and the person got up and said, how many people in here use Facebook ads to grow their business? And I put my hand up, and 80% of the room put up their hand. And they said, how many of you have found it profitable? And mine was the only hand that stood up. Everyone else's hands went down. This was in the early days. And then something just clicked and said, maybe I should go all in on this Facebook thing. And so I went all in on the Facebook thing, and I started to understand it and said, okay, well, I'm going to be a Facebook consultant. I'm going to teach other people how to do this. And I started doing that. And then people started saying to me, well, I don't want you to teach me. Can you just do it for me? I said, I think so. So we started an agency, and that started happening. All the meanwhile, I'm still at this church thing. And then years pass, and I think it was 2011 or 12, 13, 14, 2014-ish. The Sunday, the last Christmas Sunday was my last Sunday there. I walked away from that just thinking I was going to take a break. After 14 years, I needed a break. And that gave me the opportunity for a year to put all my time and attention on this digital advertising thing. And that was, gosh, like 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago now. And that 1 year break turned into this like newly formed career. And I realized, interestingly enough, that I can meet more people and help bring more causes forward by doing this than what I was doing before. So that's it in a nutshell. But here we are several years later, and still committed to Facebook and the Facebook properties, and figuring out how to get good messages out to the world using this platform.
That's fascinating. So the next book title is going to be From Pastor to a Marketing Guru.
Well, people always ask, like, how did you transition? But like I told you, I always kind of was doing it in the background, so it wasn't so dramatic. I was kind of learning it and doing it. But yeah, that's sorry, pastor to Mark. And the funny thing was, Forbes magazine wrote an article about me on how I did that, and then CNBC News and Yahoo News picked up the article and syndicated it on their platforms. And so I thought, well, I'm a big shot now. I'm on CNBC. I'm on Yahoo News. And I remember the first time it was posted. Obviously, it was a slow news day that they had me on the front page. But I was looking at the comments, and the first comment was basically like, he went from one scam to another scam, right? And then I just started to realize generally people don't like pastors or marketers. So I was like, so be it. But
there's a lot of people that are not supportive of somebody who's succeeding in something.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I took it with a grain of salt, but I did realize very quickly that the general public, like the non-business owner public, thinks marketers are scammers and thinks pastors are scammers. So I was like, well, okay, well, something I'm going to have to overcome, but it's all good fun.
So there's a lot of people actually in the meetings and even industry who are thinking of starting their own business and start just like you did with the side hustle, doing that. What would you advise them to do, and what are the key milestones they should be looking at before saying, you know what, I'm going all in this other gig?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I had it lucky. And what I mean by that is it would have been a very big risk for me to go all in and to walk away from, if someone has a secure job and has a salary and has a family to take care of and all that, it's a very big risk to step out on your own. In fact, I have many friends right now who ask me for the same advice. And they're like, Nick, I hate my job. I have this business idea. Should I step out on my own? And I said, hell no. I mean, for the most part, I think there's this beautiful vision of entrepreneurship and how easy it is, and how everybody who's an entrepreneur drives a Lamborghini and lives in a penthouse in Miami Beach. And like, that's not the reality, right? It's a lot of work. 99% of the businesses fail within the first 5 years. Like it's a grind. So it is a big risk. And so for me, I would just say, not so much that you have a contingency plan in place, but you make the transition slower than what you think. And Gary Vee talks about this all the time. People are like, well, I've got to quit my job and do this thing. He goes, no, you've got 24 hours in a day. Use the 8 hours a day to do your real job, and use the other remaining hours in the day to figure this other thing out until you could say, oh, I'm in a comfortable place to be able to let go of this and move full-time into this. So for me, again, I got lucky because at that time I had been engaged to my wife, now wife, fiance then. And she just said to me, like, look, Nick, I'll give you a 6-month runway. Like, just don't worry about it. Go after this full tilt ahead, and I'll support us for 6 months. 6-month runway, you just go for it. And fortunately, I was able to go for it, put 100% of my attention in there. And then within less than 6 months, we had built something that was sustainable. But if I didn't have that, like, it would be hard. So I would tell everybody, especially if you've got family and you've got all these things you got to risk, you definitely want to go all in on your thing, but don't let go of the thing that's going to cover you. Again, do the thing you need to do for 8 hours a day. Use the rest of your time to build this thing. And as this thing starts to take off, and then you have a sense of comfort, that would probably be a good time to say, okay, now we'll go full time with it.
That's a great advice. And from what I'm hearing from you and my own experiences, you cannot do anything if you're not aligned with your spouse and don't have the support.
Well, I mean, I know some people who do, but life is hell. I mean, it's very difficult, right? In my situation, of course, I was lucky, and I know in your situation, we're lucky. We have spouses who support us. In fact, my wife, after I think about a year or so, quit her job and started working with me, and together now we run our businesses. but yeah, without the support, I mean, again, and everybody knows who starts off as an entrepreneur, and then all your friends and family are like, so what do you do? And you have a hard time explaining what you do, and they're like, well, you're crazy. And and then if that happens inside the home, yeah, there's a ton of stress involved there. So ideally you'd want the support of your family around you who can be like, just, you got this, we're here to support you, and really believe in you to push this forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. When you're talking about Facebook ads, which, at the time of recording, we're early May, and now Facebook changed again the algorithm.
All the time.
Yeah, right. So my main question here for business owners, especially those who are starting their business or they have a small business, when do they have to look into doing Facebook ads? And obviously that's will be related to what they want to achieve that you're going to talk about.
Sure.
And then when or who and how should they work with in order to do that? Because it's a profession in itself, and you cannot be good at everything.
Yeah, I love this question. So to answer the first question, to be honest with you, for the most part, whenever a company or whenever a potential client comes to me and says, like, should I do Facebook ads? My answer is no, unless you have to. And what I mean by that is advertising in general is a very expensive, very risky endeavor because you're spending money without knowing if that money is going to return for you. And when I'm talking about real direct response marketing, right? I'm not talking about putting up a banner somewhere on the highway and saying, I hope people see the banner and call our number. Like, don't do that kind of advertising because you can't even track that. You don't even know if it works. Direct response advertising is where you put something out with a direct call to action for somebody to do something and you could track it. And that's the kind of advertising we're talking about. But again, advertising is a very expensive endeavor and a very risky endeavor if you're doing it for the first time. So for what I suggest for the most part, for the first people starting out, is instead of doing paid advertising, you do guerrilla advertising or guerrilla marketing. What is guerrilla marketing? Is essentially roll up your sleeves, roll up your pants, get on the phone, tap into your network, call the people you need to call to like build the relationships, see how you can drum up business the old school way. Now, does it suck? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. But so is advertising. But the point is, you want to see if you could generate business without having to spend money first. And that would be my suggestion, because when you can do that, then you can kind of like solve and figure out your processes. You can figure out what it takes. Okay, this is what it takes to get a client. This is the onboarding process. This is where we see some hiccups. This is where we need to fix things up. And you want to do that before you start spending money. So for me, it's do the guerrilla marketing, the networking, the picking up the phone and cold calling or emailing or knocking on, whatever you have to do. Get the business that you need to get without spending a penny first. And then if your business requires that you don't really need to scale into this big thing, you could continue to do that. You can continue to build referral networks for clients to, refer other clients to you. You could continue to hit the pavement. You could continue to do those things, which is a great way. Or if you say, well, yeah, my business now is at a point where it's ready to scale because we have our processes in place. I'm comfortable if I spend some money, I have a good feeling of how that will return for me. That would be the right time to do advertising. So most people, I say, are doing advertising at the wrong time. They have a great idea. They're like, I'm going to run with this idea. They spend money on ads. They say, it doesn't work. And then they turn their back on it. And it wasn't that ads didn't work. It's that you didn't have the process in place. And then you end up losing a little bit of money, which we want to avoid. So that's what I would suggest to someone thinking about, when should I do it? You'd only do it when it's necessary, when the processes are in place and you're ready to grow your business. That's a good time to do it. Now, with regards to the second question, which Eric, you'll have to remind me again. I got so caught up in the first one.
Who you're going to do it with, and what are the criteria? How can you find the right person? Because to your point, there's a lot of people that are a lot of good people, and the rest.
Sure. So it's a great question. And I like, Dean Jackson originally with Dan Sullivan came up with this question. And then Dan Sullivan wrote a book with Ben Hardy, which asks a very simple question, a very simple shift. But I think it's something that everyone should know. And it's asking the question, who, not how.
Absolutely.
right? Most people as business owners or entrepreneurs are asking, how do I do this? How do I do Facebook ads? How do I advertise? How do I do HR? How do I do all these things? And the problem is, very quickly do you work yourself into a job where you're wearing 15 hats, you're overworked, you're burnt out, you're overwhelmed, you want to quit, and you're making no money. Which is the thing we want to avoid. So I think advertising fits into that category as well, where you shouldn't be asking, how do I do this? Because then you're just giving yourself a job. You should ask, who can do this for me, and who can do it in a way that will be profitable for us? So that's the first thing you should be thinking. But I would also suggest that every business owner should be involved with the advertising on a certain level. What I mean by that is, if you're the principal, you know your business better than anybody else. You know the hooks and the angles. You know about your clients better than anyone else. So you can provide very valuable data to somebody who's going to be doing the marketing for you. But at the same time, you just want to know enough to say, okay, I know what I want. I know how to get there. I just need someone to implement it for me. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you have one of two choices. A, do I hire someone to work in my company? Right? 100% in my company. Now, the benefit to that is that you have a salaried employee who works 40 hours a week for you. They're dedicated to you. They're on your team, and they're like in line completely with the vision of the business and trying to drive it forward. That's the benefit. The downfall to that is just that those people probably don't have the same skill set or experience that someone who's like me, for example, running an agency and working with millions of dollars a month and working with many different clients, and who's just been doing it for a long time. But if you hire someone like us to do it, you're not going to get 40 hours a week. You're not going to get someone who's going to be in line perfectly with your business. So you have to think about that. My general advice for most people is, when you're starting out and you're ready to do ads, you hire a company who can run the ads for you and to work on your marketing for you and help you with all of that. But you want to do it with the intent that at some point, I'm going to transition this internally, because then you have full control, right? And that's going to probably be cheaper for you and more cost effective than having an outside agency anyway. So that would be the long-term goal. And then to top up the question, or to finalize it, like, who should you be thinking about then that can help you here? I think there's a couple things to think about. Number one, do they have experience in your specific space, right? So for me, if we have an e-commerce company come up to us, 9 times out of 10, I'll say, I can't help you. Now we could, but we don't focus on e-commerce. There are great people who focus on that better than we do, right? So do they have experience in the space that you're in? Secondly, do they have some sort of a guarantee, if you will? Now, even for us, I can't guarantee results. It's impossible to guarantee results, but I can guarantee a good experience. So in all of our contracts, whenever we work with somebody, we tell them this: look, number one, you're not locked into any long-term agreements. And most agencies are like, oh, you're locked in for 6 months or a year. You can't move. We're like, no, 30 days, every 30 days, that's all you're locked into. Secondly, if you had a really bad experience for some reason, just let me know and we'll return all your money. There's been times where not only, and this was a mistake of mine, it wasn't the client, but we onboarded a client that we probably shouldn't. Like, I didn't do my due diligence well enough before bringing on a client. They weren't in the best place. We brought them on, we ran campaigns for them, and it was an utter failure. Like, everything crashed and burned. So not only did I return our fees that they paid us to run the campaign, I also refunded their ad spend, which is money out of my pocket. But I did that because I knew I made the mistake of bringing them on when I shouldn't have, because I was a little greedy and I wanted another client. So you want to ask yourself, does the person I'm about to work with have some sort of a guarantee in place to say, if this whole thing flops and goes to hell, am I at risk? And if the answer is they don't, then you probably want to think about something else, right? And then the third one is just, again, this is general best business practice. You don't want to be locked into a contract, of course, which I already mentioned, but you want to just see if they have referrals. Like, are they endorsed and referred by people you trust? If they've worked with people you trust, probably a good sign that they'll do some good work for you. But the biggest thing is, like, in my industry, everybody likes to overpromise and underdeliver. I try to take it the other way and underpromise and overdeliver. And I'm upfront right from the beginning. And I say, look, there's always a risk. There's always potential that it's not going to work out. It may not happen the way you like, and you have to be comfortable with that risk. If you're not, I'd rather not work together. If you are, and you know that that's the case, then it gives us a chance to potentially work together. So those are just a few things I'd probably look at when you're thinking about hiring someone to help you with that.
And that speaks a lot to your integrity that I mentioned at the beginning. So great point. I fully agree with you with the book Who Not How. Absolutely love it. And
Yeah.
especially for all the people I know in the meetings and event industry, which are thriving on logistics, on something happening that they have to be responsible for.
Right.
And I definitely was like that. I thrive on unexpected things.
Right.
And there is a tendency of willing to learn everything yourself.
Yes.
Willing to do everything yourself,
Right.
Which is the last thing to do, really, to have a business. And you're talking about Facebook and the change. What is this thing with Apple that everybody's talking about right now? That okay, they're fighting with each other. Tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, there's obviously information that I'm not privy to, and I have no idea. But the general front facing of this is Facebook has been always under the microscope for their privacy stuff. Essentially, they had that whole thing with Cambridge Analytica a couple of years ago, where private information leaked out. There was a whole big lawsuit there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me just say something straight out of the gate right now. If you're utilizing a free social media platform, you don't have any privacy. Period. Okay. If you're going to utilize their platform and it's completely free, I think the old saying goes, if you're experiencing a free product, then you are the product, which is true. Gmail, right? You think Gmail is giving you a free email platform, but they're not tracking everything you type and who you write to and what your interests are? Of course they are, right? Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, anything that is free on your phone or on your mobile device, like, please note that there's no such thing as privacy anymore. If you want privacy, don't go on social, go live in a mountain somewhere in a cabin that has no Wi-Fi, and then you might have privacy. So we'll just say that. But the point here is with advertising, the reason why Facebook is such a good advertising platform is because it collects all this data from people. Like every time we like a page, Facebook knows every time I've liked something, Eric has posted on his page. And so it starts to train the algorithm to say, okay, well, Nick likes these certain things. And then the idea is Facebook has all this data, and me as an advertiser says, well, I want to target people who like certain things. Facebook knows that data. And in a perfect world, Facebook shows you ads of things you actually want. That was the whole idea. They track your behavior, and as a result of the behavior tracking, they show you things that you want. So if I'm looking up videos on jujitsu, is it any wonder why all of a sudden I get ads about jujitsu or looking, whatever it be? So that's the whole thing. But then Apple, I think, has started to realize that Facebook has all this power. And because of it, they started saying, well, we're not going to allow Facebook to track people who are using Apple devices anymore. And so they went into this big fight to say, Apple is saying, well, we're not going to allow Facebook to track that unless, Apple users give them permission. And Facebook's like, that's crazy. And so they got into this little fight. To be honest with you, I think it's because Apple wants to release their own advertising platform. And of course, they're not going to abide by their own rules, and they're going to show advertising to all their users without asking their permission. But that's a whole nother story. The point is, Facebook and Apple are in this little bit of a fight, but here's what people have to realize about using Facebook as a platform. Number one, there's no other platform on the planet like it when it comes to like being able to target people specifically. They've got all this user data, and if you're in the event space and you're trying to target a specific type of person who lives in a very specific area, you can do that via Facebook. I think the other thing people have to realize is that Facebook's entire revenue source is based on advertising. That's how they are a $1 billion company, is because of the advertising dollars. So you have to know that anytime someone threatens their advertising revenue, they're going to either fight back or make the adjustments needed to be a platform that continues to go on and on and on. So everyone asks, are you worried about the Apple update? Look, this has been going on for ages, to be honest with you. It's just now Apple's being more public about it. And Facebook is adapting, and they're continuing to adapt and making the changes they need for us to still be able to advertise fine. So I will wrap up this rant by saying this. If you are planning on advertising, I still believe that there's no better platform on the planet than Facebook and Instagram. Right now, the user base, the demographic data, all that is just through the roof. You can't compare to anything else. Number two, if you choose to advertise on Facebook or Google or YouTube for that matter, but specifically Facebook, be ready for a roller coaster ride. right? There's always changes, there's always algorithm stuff happening, there's always new learnings, there's always somebody complaining about something. And so as long as you know that you're going to be riding a roller coaster, then you don't worry about it so much. It's the people who are expecting smooth sailing the whole time that are having some issues. But still an amazing platform. I don't think that'll change anytime soon. And all this Apple hoopla is just another bump in the road, and it's nothing different than some of the other issues they've had previously.
That's not a rant to me. That's great information. Thanks a lot.
Well, good.
I was laughing and couldn't help when you say, and I get it. If you watch a lot of video on jujitsu and you like them, that you're gonna have, they're gonna show you more. But if you and I speak about jujitsu and suddenly I have ad for Jiu-Jitsu Center coming up, that's really creepy. It's like the jokes. I told my wife a joke. We all laughed. Then Alexa started laughing. Siri started laughing. Everybody was laughing.
Well, it's funny. I saw an old meme long time ago where it was a black and white image of a mom and a dad and the kids at breakfast. And the mom or the dad said something like, "Shh, be careful with what you say because Skynet is watching," right? The whole Terminator thing. And then the meme of like modern day age is like, say it louder so Alexa can hear us so they can deliver our groceries for us, right? So the point is like, yes, I mean, I'll overemphasize it. There is no such thing as privacy anymore. And you can either like get your undies tied up in a bunch and be like, gosh, this sucks, or realize that, yeah, like Alexa's listening and Google Home is listening and your phone is listening and watching and all that. It's like, I know it sucks, but again, in a perfect world, these were designed to provide you with an experience that you like, right? In the sense where if you're talking about tennis, then obviously the world around you is going to try to give you more tennis things. Now, does that get messed up sometimes? Yes, because the robot algorithm AIs are not perfect. But it's and obviously now with all this political heat and all this other stuff, people are talking about things, and the problem is it self-perpetuates, because if you take a certain political slant, then Facebook's only going to show you content on that slant, and that builds up that, and the other side is building, and so there, yes, can it be harmful and hurtful? 100%. But I think if you're aware of it and you try not to get like moved by this stuff and just realize the platform for what it is, it could be a very helpful tool, because for every bad story, there's another good story of a long lost loved one being found on a social platform that could have never happened before, or someone with a cancer diagnosis that was so unique that nobody in their local town could help them. And they went to Facebook and a doctor from another country said, I can help you. And they flew you over there. And so like for every bad story, there's a good story. And I think as long as we just kind of keep our heads on straight and realize what the platform is, it is neutral. You make it negative or positive, then I think we can have a better approach with things.
That's awesome. And I was thinking, we're talking about old meme when the internet started, expanding, and Facebook and everything. I remember seeing this meme when you saw the kid playing with his phone, and in the back of the image, you saw the book that was open, and Pinocchio was crying because the kid was now more interested by the phone, which I think was so you obviously know very well the social media world. You have young kids. What is your wife and your policy in terms of screen time for the children?
That's a great question. Now, fortunately, we're lucky in the sense that as at the time of our conversation here today, they're 4 and 3 years old. So they're very young. So as a result, we have a very easy way to control screen time for them. Like they don't know Facebook exists except when they see us like looking at pictures or we post something and they see it. I mean, they know it exists from that standpoint. But their screen time is extremely limited. It's usually weekends. And when I say screen time, we're talking about like educational screen time. So we have like educational games on the iPad, or like learning journeys, or like animal stuff on YouTube or whatever. And they love it. I mean, obviously, because they'll get so little of it. I say that now. I mean, I couldn't imagine when they're 12 or 13 and I don't even know what the world will be like when they're 12 and 13 and how to limit it. I know it's a necessary evil. I know at some point they're going to be on social. And so I think my job, as best as I can, fingers crossed, is like to instill in them as as much value and support as I can now, so that when they get on these platforms, will they have challenges? Of course they will, but they'll have a little bit of a compass, and they'll have a little bit of a gauge to know what's real and what's not, and how to navigate that. And to be honest with you, like I said, I don't know what the world's going to be like in 10 years from now. It could be a very different world than we're currently facing now. So fingers crossed. Worst case scenario, I'm just going to send them to live in a hut in Africa somewhere for their whole teenagehood, and then I'll bring them back to here and bring them back to society, and see how that works out.
They might love it there.
They might. In fact,
the countries I've been in Africa was beautiful.
Exactly,
and you have a lot of countries, by the way, that went straight from nothing to the modern technology, because obviously didn't go to the old infrastructure thing. But
right,
I have to tell you, with my kids, we have a rule: when we're at the table, nobody is allowed to have the phone.
Yes, great. I love that.
So, but that's and I know you're very, very busy, Nick. So I just want to wrap up this amazing conversation. I have two last question. Sorry?
Not at all. I got time.
Good.
I like spending time with you.
Thanks, you. Me too. That was very kind. I witnessed myself, and I'm talking about here the solitude of an entrepreneur, and the roller coaster life of an entrepreneur, and the challenge of being aware that mental health is a major issue for any entrepreneur, for anybody, as a matter of fact, but especially for entrepreneur.
Yes.
I witnessed myself in the past that I was scrolling on social media, and then everybody seems to have such a perfect and beautiful life, and I'm the only one with problems to solve. When you come to being an entrepreneur, social media, mental health, lockdown, COVID time, as an entrepreneur yourself, and obviously you're advising a lot of people, what is your advice regarding all this matter?
Yeah. So, God, it's. I think there's so many ways that we can look at it, but I think so. I'll go back to a situation I was in a while ago, and maybe this can lay some groundwork for a good conversation between us. But I was going through a really hard time. Now, this was pre-lockdown. This was pre-COVID. This is a world where COVID had not yet existed. But I was going through a very, very difficult time. And like you said, as entrepreneurs, I mean, obviously you have some great friends and everyone's like, hey, call me whenever you need. I got your back. But when you're in the situation, you're just like, oh, should I call? Should I not? What should I do? Et cetera, et cetera. And also, as a family man, so as a husband and a father and a son to my aging mother, I also felt responsibility to put the needs of others before myself, of course, as well, because that is my role as a father. You put your son's needs and your daughter's needs and your wife's needs and your mother's needs. And so I was going through a really, really difficult time. And then one of my very close friends, I call him my friend-tor. He's a friend, but he ends up being a mentor in certain cases, was the late Sean Stevenson. Now, he passed away a few years ago, but he's known as the 3-foot giant, right? Did you ever meet Sean, or do you know Sean?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, so they call him the 3-foot giant. He's literally 3 feet tall. He had some disease or syndrome that kept him wheelchair bound, but he was a motivational speaker, and we had built a great friendship over the years.
Yeah. I had never met him. I know about him, but
just he's a beautiful soul of a human being. And I remember calling him because I felt like when I was in my toughest times, he was the person that would call. And the reason why I call him is because he just wouldn't bullshit me, right? He'd call it what it is, and he wouldn't try to powder coat it, make it nice and make me feel better. He just called it what it is. And so I called him. And one of the things, we had an extensive conversation, but the point was, he said, there's a reason that when you get on an airplane and the pressure drops in the cabin and the masks fall on down, there's a reason why the stewardess or the flight attendant at the beginning of the flight tells you, well, put the damn thing on your own mouth and make sure you're okay before you can help anybody else. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. And he says, Nick, you're being honorable by putting other people before yourself. And that is the moral thing to do. And that is what the worldview has told you to do, is to sacrifice yourself for the sake of others. But it's not the healthy thing to do. And he said, you've got to take care of yourself first. And for the first time in your life, you're going to have to put yourself before your wife, before your kids, before your mother and take care of yourself first. And he goes, that could mean different things for you. That could mean a mindfulness meditation practice. That could mean doing jujitsu, like whatever it is that you have to just take care of yourself. So you're at that state where you're now okay to help other people. That's what you need to do first. And of course, the conversation spanned from there. But that has stuck with me. And not in a selfish way, but anytime I sense myself getting depressed or frustrated or overwhelmed or sad or even like little like snappy at my kids or whatever it is, I have to take a step back and I realize, oh, you know what? I haven't done self-care, whatever that means for you, for me. Like I just haven't done self-care. And so I didn't, I've always been a believer that your mindset is the most important kind of part of the whole journey of who you are. But I didn't really know how to like tangibly explain that to people or whatnot. But one thing I do realize here is I've spent a lot of time, money, and energy on quote unquote optimizing my brain health. Because if my brain is foggy and I'm not thinking right, I'm not doing the right things, I know that I am not operating at my best and it affects everything else. So, the first thing when it comes to I guess call it mental health practice, I've got a meditation practice in place. I've got self-care in place. I've got a supplement and a health regimen in place specifically for my brain. From a personal development side, again, and this is a touchy subject, so we don't have to get into it too deep, but about 2 years ago, I was introduced to the world of therapeutic psychedelics. And so I started getting into that world. And that has been a big game changer for myself and my wife. I mean, literally things shifting in my brain and my heart, making me a better human being. So we invest in that. And again, every day is a challenge. Like as at the time we're having this conversation, we're a year and a bit into COVID. Our country, unfortunately, has not quite caught up to the rest of the world. And so we're still in a stay-at-home order. We're still locked down. We can't take our kids to soccer and all these things we want them to do. We're constantly in the house. There's constantly all these pressures. So it's now more than ever more important to like take care of yourself first. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your business, you can't take care of your family, you can't take care of any of that. So I would suggest, again, whatever self-care means to you, and it could be different for different people, but whatever self-care means to you, think about prioritizing that health, self-care, personal development, mind, brain, body, just as much. I think I wrote a post once that says if we as entrepreneurs invested as much resource into our health that we did to our business, imagine where we could be as business owners and as human beings. So I think it's something that's lacking amongst a lot of business owners today.
My goodness, Nick, that's so much great advice. And thank you for sharing that. And to your point, I think, that it's not very politically correct to speak about some stuff today. Personally, I don't care. I always thought that political correctness was blocking the society to
Sure.
No, it's like, so when somebody said, we agree to disagree, I say, for God's sake, no, we disagree. I'm okay if we disagree. We're not going to agree to disagree.
Right.
But we don't know what the world's going to be. We don't know what technology is going to be. We don't know what the world's going to be. We don't know what the therapeutic psychedelic is going to bring to people. What I'm retaining from everything you said is two things. The first one, to start with yourself. And the second thing, to always keep an open mind. And not because of your upbringing, education, whatever, to be close to other stuff. So
that's actually such a great point, because like to your point, I think when we're not open to ideas, and again, that's all we're talking about. It's not saying I agree with everything. We're just saying open to ideas. I think that's where a lot of the conflict arises. It's this belief that, well, Eric, if you don't believe what I believe, then we're enemies. That's not true. There's going to be a million and one things that we don't agree on, but we could still be friends. And I think if people have that idea that, and I think that's where one place that I'm finally getting to now is I'm never going to meet anybody who agrees with 100% of the things that I believe. And that's okay. And I can honor the belief system of someone else and honor my own at the same time and still have beautiful chemistry as a result of that. Yeah. But I think to your point, if one of the things holding a lot of people back as humans, as entrepreneurs, as parents, as whatever, is just being stuck and not open to just even consideration of ideas. And the moment we can start doing that, I think we have a great potential to just expand and explore some things that could be beneficial to us.
Absolutely. And I hope we can go back to, as Ellen DeGeneres said, judging people only by the type of car they drive.
Yeah, I might do that a little bit, right? And I know you do that too. So no, I love that. But imagine if that was it, right? Like things would be a lot better. I love that saying. Right. Yeah.
So Nick, I hope we're going to see each other face to face earlier than that. But next year, MMT, in 1 year time, we're going to see each other. Sure. I don't know how many bottles of champagne we're going to have.
But enough for a year to celebrate. At least 2 years.
Right. What are we going to celebrate in 1 year time?
There's a couple of things. I think one, that we as a society have come out of this on the other side, and are thriving. I think for me, at least, it's like, well, not just for me. I think for me and you and everybody, if we can just come out through the other side of this, and I know you're way ahead of us there out in Florida than we are here, but we just come out on the other side of this better than what we were when we got in. I think for me personally, we'd be celebrating the fact that finally, we won't get into the whole story, but finally I live in the house that I'm supposed to be living in. Because this last year and a half, I've moved 3 times already, with a 4th coming up. I'd have a nice place to call home. I'd be settled and just getting back to some sense of like old normalcy, if you will. Just getting back to life where I can go back and do jujitsu and go to the gym and take the kids out to soccer and swimming and all these things. I'll have 4 bottles of champagne with you on that.
Awesome. Thank you. And I should pre-record the sentence, because every time I ask that question, I obviously give credit to Jason Gaignard and I think Clay Ebbert for coming up with that question. Yeah. But that's another, meeting you, getting to know you, having this conversation today, and so many others is another blessing. Thanks to Jason. And I really want to thank you for spending your time with me today and sharing so much knowledge. I'm sure it's going to help everyone who's been listening. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, Eric. And if people don't know you well enough now, they should know this, that you are, there's 2 types of people in the world, givers and takers. You're one of the biggest givers I've ever met in my life. So I'm just trying to catch up and make sure that I don't owe you too much debt of gratitude, and see if I can outgive you somehow. But thank you for the human being that you are, and the soul that you are, and the blessing you are to me and everybody around us. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I wouldn't want to close this without giving you the opportunity to tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm the only Nicholas Kusmich on the planet, which is a good thing if you can spell my name. So, I mean, the easiest way is obviously nicholaskusmich.com is the website. But if you feel that we can help you in any way and want to explore what that might look like, work with nic.com. Probably the best place to start. You just fill out a little bit of form there. We'll hop on a call and see if there's any way that we could be of service to you. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Be well.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you, Nick, to take the time to speak with me. Amazing conversation. Truly enjoyed it. And as I said, I can listen to you for hours. Thanks again for sharing your knowledge and for reminding everyone that I almost take an eye from you. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to reach out to me, please go on LinkedIn and join my Facebook group on www.eventbusinessformula.com/group, where we discuss everything related to owning your business in the meeting and event industry. Thank you.